So hi, everyone. Welcome to the time of use rate pilot program first quarter check-in webinar. Like I said, we'll get started as people continue to filter in. I just wanted to go over a few housekeeping notes. As I said, this webinar is being recorded and we'll be putting it up on our YouTube account for your future viewing if you want to go back and reference it, and for anyone who wasn't able to make it. As you might have seen, we've called or posted a meeting of the Municipal Light Board, just in case there is deliberations going on between them. So there's not a quorum right now, but if another member does come, we'll have to pause and just have them call their meeting to order.
Sure.
There will be a question and answer section at the end. So we're going to ask people, if they don't mind, to hold on to your questions until then. We're going to try to get through our presentation in about 30 minutes or so, and then open it up to you for questions, and then and close it out at the end. So I'll just go ahead and jump right into the agenda. We're going to start with a refresher on the time of use rates pilot program. I know a lot of you are participants of the program itself, but we did open this up to anyone who was generally interested. So there might be some folks here who aren't fully aware of everything that goes on with time of use. As I said, we'll go over the results of the first quarter that we've seen so far. And then we'll go over the survey that you folks were gracious enough to take for us. Then we'll go over some case studies of certain customer groups, certain technologies. And as it is close to the summer solstice, we'll go over some suggestions for the summer for your energy usage. Then we'll hop into the Q&A, and we'll close out with just looking ahead at some next steps. So moving ahead, the time of use rate pilot program is the culmination of over 2 years of research, discussion, deliberation, and approvals, during which we defined what time of use rates meant to us, and we set out a certain number of goals for us for rolling them out to our customers. The definition that we agreed on here was that time of use rates are dynamic rate structure that more precisely pass on Belmont Light's energy costs to our customers. And the four goals that we identified throughout our process and that have driven our implementation of the rates were to lower costs for our customers who are able to shift their usage, to lower costs for ourselves by reducing peak supply costs, to create more opportunity for greener power supply by getting away from the dirtier sourced peaker plants, and to support strategic electrification along the way. Just an overview of the pilot program itself. Our goal is to provide data for ourselves and for the Municipal Light Board to review, to decide on the viability of a future time of use rate program. That data will be reviewed at the end of the program, which you see is the December of 2022. So we'll get into the analysis of it in 2023. And there are 146 participants in the program right now. Now this check-in webinar, we're covering the period of January 8th through April 8th of this year. January 8th was the initial billing period. So that's how we're looking at it. And just as a reminder of the rate schedule, especially since we have moved into the summer peak schedule, which means that there is a different schedule, different hours and rates for this term. And the bill that you will be receiving this month will not cover the summer rates yet. The next bill that you receive starting in July should have this set of rates attached to it. So now I'm going to pass it over to Ben, who's going to go over our first quarter results.
Thanks, Aiden. So actually, just we'll dive into the next slide, please. Sorry, I'll introduce myself as well. I'm Brent the Virgin, the energy specialist at Belmont Light. You probably have seen my name on a lot of the emails and correspondence. I probably have talked to you, a lot of you, before and during the program. So I work on a lot of this analysis and try and help you understand what the billing is. So what we looked at was the first actual quarter one, and kind of where the consumption was on peak versus off peak. And throughout this quarter, overall, we had an 18% on peak and 82% off versus off peak. So what we're looking at is seeing that a very significant amount of the load is just is off peak, and that's from natural people being doing their normal things and just being off peak without shifting any behavior, and some customers actually taking the time to shift. We do realize that this was initially a smaller on peak window with only being a 4-hour, and that we're going to possibly see some changes to that moving forward as we get into the summer. Next, please. So we looked and we broke down what the time of use rate compared to the rate A, and kind of what that average was, and what would be if this group, the time of use customers, would be if they were on rate A. So the average monthly usage during that time frame was 876 for the customers who are on time of use, which comes out to a bill around $146. And if they're on rate A, it comes out at the 19 cents, it comes out to a rate of $169, which is a savings for the customer of around $23 per month. And that's just barely at a 0.2 cents per kilowatt hour variance. Comparatively speaking, looking at the average customer and the regular rate A, they're seeing an average bill of 557 kilowatt hours, which is lower. And this does incorporate all of our customers who do have electric-based technology, as well as the customers who don't. So we feel that overall, the average customer is seeing a 500. So they're seeing a slightly lower bill, but that's just because they are seeing the average customer seeing a lower kilowatt hour bill. Next, please. So we also looked at the buyback and what we were receiving from the customers during on peak versus off peak specifically, we're just looking at just our solar customers. And this is what we were kind of expecting. We were not getting much back because anything we were getting back was typically during the off-peak consumption. As you'd see, the average came out to 95%. And that's because during the production hours or during the peak hours, it's 4 to 7. And in New England, it gets that's when we're seeing most of the sundown is between 4 to 5. So you're not seeing as much production getting pushed back onto the grid. Most of that's being actually used up by the home. So we're not seeing much of that back to us. So this is kind of what we were expecting, but it is actually just it couldn't confirm what we were seeing. We'll definitely expect these numbers to change and shift as we start getting into higher production months like this past spring, and more into once we see with the summer months, especially. Next, please. So looking comparatively speaking at the time use buyback rate compared to what our rate is, and the compensation is average is all in all, it's 7 cents per kilowatt hour. This is less than the current rate, but this is also during the lower time frame for buyback. So for us, it is cheaper to compensate. It is cheaper for us to purchase power during the winter. So that's why the buyback rate itself is lower. When we do the work on look at during the summer months, that rate is going to be higher because we are paying more because it is more expensive. So we're seeing that. And comparing the time of use customers who are pushing back about 246 kilowatt hours averagely per month back to the grid. The average solar customer is pushing back 297, so slightly more, which leads us to make a guess, because this is preliminary, so we haven't fully looked into these numbers. Preliminary, it kind of looks at what we're seeing at is that more customers are using their solar to compensate, that they're actually using their solar more. So it's like I said, the variance in that is that we're seeing less coming back from our time of use customers versus our regular solar customers. So, next, please. We looked at overall what would be if we took our group of time of use customers, and if we took the time of use customers and placed them back onto the rate A, what would that usage from January 8th to April 8th, what would that usage translate to in terms of actual bills? And what we're seeing is that average is that for customers who are on the buyback, it's a $30 saving, $30 less. And then if all the customers were on rate A with the consumption that we saw, is that the average bill is $69 less on time of use. That it's 16% less than what was being paid for by the average customer on this on the time of use rate versus the regular rate A. So, next, please. So a lot of you we were sent out a survey a couple of weeks ago, and we asked customers just to kind of get a gauge of where customers are, what actions have been taken. And we actually got 50% of the respondents back, 73, which is great. That's actually a really great number, and we kind of feel very confident in what the answers we got back and the feedback we received. So we asked four main questions. Next, please. Starting with whether the program itself is easy to understand. And most of the participants do agree that the program is easy to understand. And it was interesting to see that there was about two or three customers that did say it wasn't very easy to understand. And there are some comments that came along with it. And we believe that we'll make sure that we'll be able to reach out and make sure they do understand that. But for the most part, I mean, you're looking at most customers do understand what the program is, which means that we're through our programs, through the forums, and through the literature that we've put out, we've made sure to ensure that you as participants, as well as just the general public, understand how the time of use rate is and how the time of use rate is different than a regular rate. Next, please. Second question was that asking and verify how easy has it been to make changes around the house? And this was all varied. And I think this is a lot to do with the makeups of different households, whether it's a single person or a couple versus an entire two people living in a household versus an entire family. You're going to get various reactions and changes to and stubbornness into how to implement and make changes to make sure that to achieve those savings and see savings in the household. So most people did agree, but I think that there is it started to detract there, where it's may not be easy, very easy, but it was easy enough to make some certain changes. And we'll see, and we'll compare these results to the results we receive after the summer months have happened, because I'm sure those changes are going to be very different. So we'll see that. Next, please. One of the things we wanted to check was to see if customers were actually seeing savings and rectify that. And this is very mixed. A lot of customers were, seeing something, but there's a lot of neutrality in this. And so we understand that we need to make sure that customers do understand that there are savings to achieve and they are achieving savings, which is why we're having this check-in. And so we're working on a solution that customers are able to do that and see those savings easily. It's coming down, and be prepared to for some literature around that coming soon. Next, please. And then the one we wanted to keep gauging is whether customers would want to continue this time of use rate afterwards. And overwhelmingly half of, 60% do want to continue this on the time of use rate, whether that is for changes that they're seeing they are seeing that they're changing and they're able to do this. But very much everyone wants to move forward and keep on this, which is a really good, something to hear, that us hearing back is very good indicator that people want this, that we were hearing it by word of mouth, being able to actually tangibly see this results by participants, that they want to continue just after the first few months is very good. So next, please. And then we asked some indicators as to what actions they've taken to move the energy off peak. A lot of people have said that they've set timers on those major electrical loads, make it easier. Use the EV chargers, so those customers who have electric vehicles are able to set those timers and push it to the off hours. Now that we're getting into the summer months, that means you can set the timers on pool pumps, so it's outside of those hours, so they're running during those off hours instead. And similarly, I guess it would be timing using a smart thermostat to change heating loads, to change air conditioning loads as well, to set those times. And then the simple things that I was receiving feedback and wanted to see from a couple of customers and wanted to see if generally this was happening, was whether notes were put next to major appliances. Because I had received feedback from a couple of people that were literally taking and putting sticky notes next to the dishwasher to make sure that it wasn't being run at the time, or the dryer. And so I was kind of seeing if if something was done. A lot of comments that we were receiving and the freeform comments and kind of what people are taking was adjusting when laundry and the dishwasher were being run. That being able to take that mindset and change and be able to do the laundry after 8 o'clock, or do it in the morning on the weekends. Being able to remember to set the time delay on the dishwasher, so you can just set it and forget it, and it will automatically run in a couple hours afterwards. I know personally from my family, we've run it and you just wait and set it up at the end of the night, and so that's just a practice of ours, that it's just normally running at the end of the night regardless of when dinner was. We also that comment that I mentioned earlier, and was trying to get this is a recurring theme that we received on a lot of the comments, was how to get the entire household involved and how to make everyone a player, and this trying to move peak energy off peak to try and get those rates. So something to think about is what's been working effectively, because we also, in the Q&A session, we also want to hear comments as to what's been working, what's not been working inside your own household. And we know that you should have received, we've been sending out the magnets with the hours. So those will be going out, and we're continuing to send those out as we receive information. And we'll talk about that also at the end of the presentation. So next. All right. So specifically, we dove into 3 specific customers that I wanted to address and showcase what they did and what the actions have seemed to have taken just by looking at their usage patterns. So one is what we call no tech, which is a regular customer, does not have any sort of electric technology. The second is an electric vehicle customer, and the third is a solar and battery storage customer. Next. So for this first customer, generally speaking, this is some loose background that it's a gas customer, so there's no electric heat at all. And they do have central AC, so we'll see some changes in their usage pattern come the summer probably. But taking their non-summer usage, and this does include, for all three cases, this does include all non-summer usage, so January through May, and then October, November, and December usage, and looking and seeing what their patterns are. So that's why the 2022, those amounts are much lower because the final 3 months of the year are not factored in. But if the customer was on the time of use rate in 19, 20, and 21, they would have seen a little bit of savings. And again, it's the same thing. You're seeing the same pattern in 2022, is that they are saving. Overall, they are seeing a savings. But they're as a customer who's doesn't have a large tech load to a large electricity load, excuse me, to shift. It does make it a little fine-tuned, but overall, there you are seeing savings. Next, please. So looking at what they're on peak and off peak, the actual breakdown, it's maintained that it's actually the same. They've maintained very basically the same. We're not seeing a change from 1 year to big changes from 1 year to the next. If you do look at between last year and since they are on time of use, it does look there is a 2% difference. So it is possible that they have made some changes themselves to adjust for that. And that's as simple, like I said, is shifting the laundry or changing the dishwasher, just doing those things that the fixes that they can make do make a difference. So next, please. Now, as I was talking about, the EV, electric vehicles are typically a large load. So this customer has 2 vehicles, a plug-in hybrid and a fully battery electric vehicle with a level 2 charger installed. The vehicles were purchased in 2019 and 2021. So you see that on the time of use rate, they would have seen savings. And then now, but this customer, there's in 20 and 21, they were very close that I even made a note of myself saying this customer is going to have to make some severe changes with their pattern, because they weren't going to be seeing savings. They're actually going to probably be seeing some increased bills. But then come 2022 and the time of use rate is implemented and they're on that rate. And what we're seeing is, I mean, they're saving almost $200 already this year in terms of bills. And that's just by shifting off load. So if you dive into the next one.
Ben, I'm sorry, I've got to interrupt you just for a second to call to order a meeting of the Belmont Municipal Light Board. And that's because we have a quorum. Michael McRae, Dave Beavers, and myself are on. And just to be caught, we've done this just to be cautious in order to make sure there's no possible open meeting law violation. The 3 of us on and talking about a Belmont Light program that we've all been very much involved with. So I just need to interrupt to say that. Thank you.
Yeah, no problem, Steve. Can you actually go to the next slide? Thank you. So as you can see, like I was saying, the customer was noting that there was some changes, and then that between 2020 and 2021, a lot of their usage was on peak, significant usage. But then so far, they've been seeing 88% off peak now, which is a huge shift. And that's what they're seeing that savings in. Is since they're able to shift that load to the off peak, they're seeing huge savings, and they're seeing that they were able to make just that simple action of programming the timer on their electric charger, was able to do that. So, and this last customer is a solar customer with a battery storage system, battery energy storage system, which is BESS. That's what that acronym stands for. So this is about 8 kilowatt solar system that was installed in 2018. So before this information is relevant, and the battery system was installed in 2021. So it's been installed for about a year now. And as you can see with the cost comparison, so this is taking into account both the solar and the solar buyback, as well as the regular time of use rate. So with the buyback rate and with the customer's regular usage, they would have been seeing savings in 2020 and then 2021. And then so far, their bills are very much a lot smaller than what they were seeing, and that we're guessing that they're pairing the battery storage system and the solar system together and pushing off and putting more energy onto the grid when they can. Next slide, please. So looking at just the off-peak usage, this is the consumption, is that because of this is just looking at the consumption, not anything to do with the buyback, the energy sent back to the grid. They are slowly decreasing as their solar system does more, pushes more and consumes more during the on-peak hours, along with paired with that battery system in 21. But then, well, the customer did some tweaking in terms of how their battery system paired to their solar system. They were able to push to 94% of their usage consumption on their bill is during off-peak hours, and only 6% on peak. We're looking at the buyback rate. Next slide. Now the buyback, the on-peak versus the off-peak. Their 2019, there's very little usage. So a lot of it is during the off-peak, so what would be very low. But then if you look at as it goes through in 2021, they started probably the battery system was they're balancing the battery system with the solar and moving forward. And then once the time of use rate was implemented, looking at that rate, they putting a lot more back onto the grid during on-peaks period. So they were trying to take advantage of that on that system. So they were able to not only use and cover their usage in the house with the solar and the battery, but they did have enough to push back to the grid as well, which does help with our costs overall, and does help with all of the Belmont Light customers. So next, please. Back to you.
Yeah, so I'll take over from here. So as I mentioned, we're heading into the summer, and obviously the temperatures are rising. More energy use shifts towards AC and everything like that. So just a few tips are fairly simple, but you'd be surprised at how many people either have forgotten or didn't know them. But first off, just set your thermostat slightly higher than you would normally set it for the summer. Make sure, you can make sure that you're comfortable, but just by raising it to 2 degrees can save you 7 kilowatt hours during a peak period. Second one, just to, use smart power strips, which turn quote unquote dumb non-smart devices into smart devices by turning them off when they're not in use. Third, utilize your outdoor grill instead of an oven, just because an oven affects you 2 ways. Obviously costs more energy, and it warms the kitchen even more, which makes your thermostat work in overdrive. And third is obviously very simple, but use an indoor fan instead of your AC, but also remember that fans cool people, not rooms. So don't just leave it on and walk out. It's not doing anything to actually cool the room at that point. But now I think we will go ahead and open up to questions. I'll go ahead and either just raise your hand on Zoom, or if you want to put it into the chat, we'll try to take them as they come in. Okay, first off is Steve. I'll go ahead and.
Well, I don't know if anybody else was going to ask questions, but Ben, do you have any sense about whether there's overall energy savings by moving to time of use rates? I know there's been studies that show that once time of use rates go into effect, it's not just the shifting, but there's a slight reduction in overall energy use, which is also beneficial.
Yeah, and I am aware of those studies as that you mentioned, Steve. We haven't dug into that yet. We've done a preliminary look. We haven't looked, but specifically, what I'd want to do is look at the group that is what we consider the non-tech crew, that non-tech cadre, because those would be the people who would do that. Everyone else has load building, electric vehicles, air source heat pumps, even solar to an extent, and those all add to a customer's load. So we wouldn't see a reduction in energy. It's possible we wouldn't see a reduction, but in, like it was mentioned earlier, is that overall as a group, the time of use customers have a higher bill than our average customers. And so we're seeing that, and I believe that's attributed to our time of use customers possibly being skewed to having electric loads. So right now, the answer to that would be no. We're not seeing that, but it's something that we do want to. It's something that we can dig into.
Yeah, I would just mention that it could also be that the low income customers are not included in the pilot, and they may, I'm guessing, have a somewhat lower usage than regular residential customers.
Yeah. Yes, I'm noting this down as something we can look into.
Okay, we have a few questions pop up in the chat. I'll start with from David Gold. Is the objective to end this program and move us back to the standard rate before coming out with a new program? I don't know if that's actually something that has been discussed yet, so don't have a question right now for you, but that's certainly something that that we can discuss. The ultimate decision maker is going to be the municipal light board as to whether to institute time of use rates as a permanent rate going forward, and if it's going to be the current rate, or if it's going to make some tweaks to it. So again, we'll have to take that in for internal discussions, and we'll get back to you. The next question is from Daryl King. How do people feel about having weekends included in time of use? Ben, have you gotten any?
I haven't heard. Yeah, I was thinking about that. I haven't heard anything for it or against it. And so I guess not having heard anything, I wouldn't be able to comment fully on it. I know it's been something debated. It was heavily discussed and thought through and debated on both sides during the discussion with LBAC and with the light board when we were looking at this rate. And I think we'll definitely look at it and evaluate it moving forward. It kind of depends on what would be the impact and what the positive and negatives are for the rate as well as Belmont Light itself, because we have to look at both aspects.
And actually in response to that, there were two responses here. First, that, I think weekends should be included for their simplicity. And then Daryl actually responded, it's not that complicated, and weekends don't typically have the same peaks, but the inconvenience level is still there. So just something to keep in mind. I'm going to go to one question in chat first, and then we'll go to the hand raised. Question here is, time of use consumption has saved me a lot. This person has heat pumps, but I've lost with buyback since in winter solar buyback is so low. Nets out to losing about $1 per month. Will be much better in the summer. And then just the person had to leave. So it's something to think about.
Yeah. Yep. Yeah, and that's something we'll definitely take in and look at overall. And it's something we do want to hear back from in terms of, especially they're looking especially at heat pumps as what the impact is with customers. So we do want to hear the feedback on that.
Great. And we had one hand raised, so you can feel free to go ahead.
Sure. Some of the smart thermostat vendors have integration with time of use programs. I know that Nest thermostats do that, so they can adjust the air conditioning based on the prevailing rates. Is there any plan to integrate with that? I don't know what's involved, and I'm curious if this is on your map, on your roadmap.
Yeah, I do know some of those. They were, because those tend to be with the investor-owned utilities, which have a larger footprint. They have that. We do have a separate program, Connected Homes, which operates with some of the vendors. I believe, actually give me 30 seconds and I can pull up the list. I know Google Nest is one of them. Ecobee is another. What are the other ones? There's another one on here. Oh yeah, sorry, it's Google Nest and Honeywell. Ecobee is not. I believe they're trying to get Ecobee involved. So the Connected Homes program works because it's a little bit different. It does have the controlled aspect and the timing in terms of our hours, but those are specifically called events. About 4 to 5 called events during a month, and customers receive a monthly stipend given quarterly for participating in that in the Connected Homes program. But those hours are typically do coincide, and that's what we were noticing and everything during that, and that it does work. And we do have a lot of customers who are on the Connected Homes program and in the time of use rate already. And that was a question actually a lot of them had for me when they were doing their application. Is whether they can continue, and we've more than been happy to continue that onto that program. So the two do work hand in hand. And there's more information about that on our website, or I'd be happy to have a conversation about if it's possible. And if you have heat pumps and don't have a connection to a smart thermostat, there are other options out there that connect directly to the heat pumps, and we do offer rebates on those, as well as those can be incorporated into what we do offer rebates on can be incorporated in the Connected Homes program as well.
Okay. So I'm not seeing any additional questions, but feel free to just raise your hand if we'll move on a little bit. Feel free to raise your hand if you do have a question. Just a few reminders here. As Ben mentioned, we do have the time of use fridge magnets. They're available. If oh, sorry, we go to Rich Snow.
Thanks. My question is, I'm trying to deal with an air conditioning system that has a variable rate compressor, and there are very few controllers that can work with this thing. It's made by Carrier. I'm sorry, this is kind of in the weeds, but are you aware of any kind of smart thermostat that might work with this unique style of compressor?
Yeah, I have heard that Carrier can be difficult. They're central. Generally speaking, just through the years, I have heard this in terms of integration. Just with their manufacturing. I have not heard of a solution other than direct controls, which we and that would be like a hardwired direct control setup. I know like some of the big IOUs do that in the South. They do that, but our solutions are we're trying to look at something that's a little more customer focused than actually us having equipment in the home, because then there's a little bit of a gray area as to who's there. But yeah, I have not heard of anything a smart thermostat that specifically is working with that, sadly.
All right, thank you.
Great. And Daryl asked, what about Sensible, which emulates the handheld controller?
Yep, so Sensible is included in the Connected Homes program. So that is able to sign up, and we have multiple customers who have signed up with the Sensible devices, and you can sign up as many Sensible devices as you have. The same with thermostats, and the same with the other one is a Flare is the other product that we offer a rebate on, and participates in the Connected Homes program. So you're able to get so for all of those they work and operate with the Connected Homes program, and then as the time of use program. So
great. Oh, sorry. So Daryl is asking, he said, wouldn't it work with the carrier?
As far as I know with Sensible, it's because Sensible operates on a IR frequency. So it needs an infrared diode to look at, whereas the carrier central air systems are all hardwired and go into the central system. So that's as far as I know with the Sensible. So.
Great. Okay, and if you have any other questions, like I said, just feel free to raise your hand. But as I mentioned, we do have the fridge magnet available. It's a good reminder of the time periods and rates over the time. So feel free to email us timeofuse@belmontlight.com. Just give us your details and we can send them out. We had a few come in recently, and we're going to send out a batch out at the end of this week. And I know we'd sent out a large batch of the initial responses that we got to our survey. So some folks should have already received them, but there are more going out. Okay. And then, as I said, or as Ben mentioned, you can set up a consultation with him at any time during our office hours. You can talk about the pilot program if you want, or anything that's related to us. And the link is right here, calendly.com/be-the-verge. And it's also available if you just go to the Energy Solutions tab on our website. You can click right there. And just to look ahead, as I mentioned, the June 2022, it begins the summer season for the pilot. Rates have been adjusted, and like I said, you'll be billed starting with your next bill. You'll see the summer rates go through there, and the summer does run through September of this year. And then looking even further ahead, we're planning to do another Q2 webinar in September after we've been able to kind of process all of the data for the 3-month period. Pretty much so planning to have it similar to this one. We'll do a survey about a month ahead of time or so. So you can look for an email with that with details to sign up for the webinar. We had a couple questions come in. Just the website seems to be better about showing usage. I believe they're referring to Smart Hub, but still difficult to find the right area. That is something, I don't know, Ben, if you can go over that.
Yeah, we do know that there is an issue with Smart Hub showing information. The information is still there. It's something we're working on. We're working on with our vendor. It's odd in the sense that it might not show up in one screen Like say, if you go to your average usage, it won't, not average usage, but if you go to one screen, it might not show up. The information might not show up, but will be in another screen. And you'll be able to see it cleanly there. We don't know why this is. We're still working on it. We've been working on it with them since January when we did notice it. Yeah, so we do know that there are issues with it. We've been working with them. It's just they don't know quite what the issue is, because it should be displayed properly, because all the information is coming across. If you do want any data, again, you can send an email to timeofuse@belmontlight.com, and we'll be able to process it if you were looking for a longer period of time than can be given through Smart Hub.
Great. And then just the last question that's come in is, has Belmont Light seen any savings due to the time use program?
Yeah, kind of like I mentioned earlier, we haven't done a deep enough dive to see where our savings is. We just wanted to focus specifically on the customers and what they would be seeing. So we have not done that analysis to an extent yet. We're working on that. We're hoping we can have some results soon. But we're still looking at this preliminarily. This is only Q1. We're going to really dive in once we kind of look more. We have Q1 and Q2 and look longer term. So.
Okay. And yeah, another question. It'd be great to see how at an overall level how much peak usage has been shifted in the town.
Yeah, that's some of the information we'll get out when we deep into the deeper dive and work on that. So that is some of the things we do want to see, is if there has been a shift and what the shift is amongst the time of use cadre customers versus the non-time of use customers, if there is a shift, if we can actually detect a shift.
Great. Okay. So let me just put up our contact info. As Ben said, if you have any other questions, feel free to email us directly and we'll get back to you. You can also visit the time of use page on our website right here. And as I said, the webinar was recorded, and we're going to do our best to email the recording. We're going to post it on our website and on our YouTube account, and we'll do our best to email out a link so that everybody can follow up on it. But thank you all for.
Hey, Aiden, let me interrupt for just a second. Unfortunately, we have to go through the sort of rigmarole process of adjourning the Municipal Light Board meeting. So I need either Michael or Dave to make the motion.
This is Michael McCray. I move to adjourn the Light Board meeting.
And Dave, you want to second that? Seconded. All in favor? Aye. The meeting adjourned. Thank you.
Great, thanks, Dave. And we'll go ahead and adjourn the webinar as well. Thank you all for joining us, and we look forward to talking with you again.